Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining NASA's Day of Remembrance Safety Town Hall. I'm NASA Deputy Press Secretary Faith Mackey, and we are joined today by NASA Administrator Bill Nelson, Deputy Administrator Pam Melroy, and Associate Administrator Jem Free. During today's town hall, we will remember our fallen astronauts and discuss best practices for safety across the agency. We will also have time for questions about safety at NASA from the audience and those that were submitted previously online. Now, we'll play a video tribute to honor the crews of Apollo 1, Challenger, and Columbia. Then we'll hear from Administrator Nelson.
NASA has always sought to better understand our universe and our place in it. And each year, NASA has a day of remembrance to honor the astronauts who gave their lives to advance exploration. We pause to remember the crews of Apollo 1, then Challenger, then Columbia. We also remember the many astronauts who lost their lives while training. These pioneers committed themselves to expanding the knowledge of the unknown. NASA shares our deepest respect with the families. The astronauts' legacy will live on through you, the families, and through NASA, through the United States, indeed, around the world. While it's a solemn day, it's a day of reflection. It's a day to honor their ultimate sacrifice in the pursuit of discovery, to honor adventurers who inspired generations of future explorers, and they made life better here on Earth. As we prepare to explore further than ever before, their sacrifice reminds us that safety is our priority. To go back to the moon and beyond will require us to do things that we've never done before. And everyone at NASA has a responsibility to make sure that we carry with us the lessons learned, always put safety first. Today and every day, we carry with us the spirit of NASA's fallen adventurers as we push the boundaries of what's possible in the cosmos. So my remarks are about a personal experience. Our crew had just returned to Earth on the 24th flight of the space shuttle. We had gone through 4 scrubs. The first scrub, although we were not scrubbed for the reason, but it was cold. It was bitterly cold that day. It was in the 40s. So, as we watched Challenger ascend into the heavens, and then something isn't quite right, your mind does not want to accept what you're seeing. And what we were seeing was a series of fatal mistakes. A series of mistakes that had occurred building up to it because there was too much of a pressure to launch. We had been delayed over a month, 4 scrubs on the pad. Finally, the 5th try, and Challenger had been scrubbed twice. A lot of pressure. Get it off. The mistakes actually started occurring before that fateful time, and it had started to occur a couple of months before, because the administrator of NASA, Jim Beggs, had been indicted in federal court for something that he did not do. A very aggressive U.S. attorney in California had brought charges on something that occurred 10 years earlier in the private sector that Jim was handling. And so Jim, having to remove himself as administrator, but still stayed in his office at NASA because he knew he could clear himself as soon as he could get the documentation out of the Department of Defense. And so Jim is sitting in his office on that day as the count proceeds on Challenger. The night before, it had become bitterly cold, 25 degrees at the Cape. And icicles are forming on the launch tower. Now, what is occurring the night before, also out in Utah at Morton Thiokol, is the engineers are seeing the temperature, and they are going to their management in Morton Thiokol, and they are begging them to stop the count because of the cold weather. In the examinations that were done after the disaster over the course of a year by the committee that included Neil Armstrong, notable physicists, they all pointed to the cold weather. That famous a physicist, when he took one of the rubberized gaskets, the O-ring, and he stuck it into a glass of cold water and let it stay there for some period of time, and then brought it out, and it broke. That was demonstrative, but in the congressional investigation, months earlier than that, one of the engineers from Morton Thiokol, when I asked, how did you know to alert the management that the O-rings, the rubberized gaskets in the field joints of the SRBs, how did you know that they were going to have a problem? He said, when we got back your SRBs, when you launched on the fifth try in a relatively warm 56 degrees, we got back the SRBs for repacking, and we noticed there was a blow-by of the hot gases. In other words, the O-rings didn't seat properly. And he said, we made the connection to the previous January. It had happened on another space shuttle. And he said, what's common to January? Cold weather. And they begged their management, and the management ignored it. And by the way, there have been some real PSTD problems for those engineers over the years. As that information was conveyed to the Cape and the committees that were so concerned there, everybody's asking everybody else. And some of the most respected figures in NASA historical lore would give double negatives, like, I can't say that it's not unsafe to launch. And in the meantime, now deposed administrator Jim Beggs is in his office at NASA headquarters, looking at the real live shots on his TV, and he's seeing all the icicles hanging on the launch tower, and he's calling the Cape to beg them to stop the count. He's thinking the icicles are going to come off and damage the silicon tiles. And they won't take his call because he's not the administrator. And so 10 miles high in the Florida sky, the hot gases at the right place, right near a strut, holding the SRB to the external tank, escape because the O-rings have not properly seated. And you know what happens. Not one mistake, but a series of mistakes. Pam lived through the destruction of Columbia years later. We thought after 2.5 years of being down after the loss of Challenger that we had fixed it all. The problem, whether it's an O-ring or whether it is a chunk of foam as on Columbia coming off the external tank with high velocity hitting the front edge of the carbon-carbon wing and knocking a hole in it, whatever the technical reason is, the real reason is a lack of communication, and especially a lack of communication from those on the line who see what's being done with the upper levels that'll ultimately make the final decision to go. That's one of the reasons, safety, that we continue to have these days of remembrance, not only to honor the obvious sacrifice that has been made so needlessly, but to also reflect on what is our responsibility for the future. It is our solemn obligation. If you see something, say something. And in the course of the Q&A, we want to make it abundantly clear to you that you have an avenue, that any kind of concern that you have an avenue to report it. And any kind of suggested retaliation will not be tolerated. You are free to report. So let me turn it over to our Deputy Administrator, Pam Melroy.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. Every year, we pause and reflect to remember our fallen colleagues, and every year, we hope that it fosters the critical discussions that we need to have inside the agency on safety. Our commitment to safety is paramount, and events like today's town hall provide us with that opportunity to reflect, to learn, and to hopefully grow together as a resilient and safety-focused organization. First and foremost, I want to acknowledge the important work that we see every day, the collective dedication that is reflected in your eyes as I look at you to ensure the safety of our missions, our personnel, and the integrity of our organization. We have such a rich history at NASA of achievements, but it's also important that we recognize the lessons learned from our setbacks and challenges. And the journey of exploration has been fraught with a lot of challenges. And unfortunately, some of them have resulted in heart-wrenching setbacks in the pursuit of knowledge. It's really core to NASA as a high-performing organization to approach these instances not only as moments of grief, but also to channel that grief into opportunities for growth. Each tragedy has provided us with invaluable lessons learned that shape our protocols, refine our procedures, and fortify, I hope, our commitment to safety. Lessons learned are the backbone of our knowledge-sharing culture and ensure the legacy of those who face tragedy lives on through enhanced safety measures and protocols. So I'd like to pause for a personal reflection. When I started at NASA, after I graduated from astronaut training, I was an experienced test pilot, but I was a baby astronaut, as I was referred to. I was stationed to support at the Kennedy Space Center what was called a Cape Crusader, supporting launch and entry and other operations on behalf of my fellow colleagues who were training for their missions. And I was really struck by the training I received out at the pad by the personnel tasked with the responsibilities for keeping the pad safe, and in lessons that had been handed down from the famous Gunther Wendt at Kennedy Space Center, but they were so viscerally still aware, even at that time in the mid-90s, about Apollo 1. They talked carefully to me about each of the lessons learned at the pad from the Apollo 1 mishap, and showed me all of the steps that they had taken, why things were set up the way they were, where things were located so that they could be easily grasped, and so forth. And I really took that to heart as core to NASA. And later, when the Columbia mishap happened, and I was involved in the crew survival investigation, which was very challenging for the agency, the courage of a few people, the then center director, then NASA shuttle program manager, and then NASA administrator, made a decision to make that information publicly available. And that was really a difficult decision to talk about how our astronauts had died, but it's so core to what we do that we take on everything, and then we share those lessons learned, not just with each other, but with our whole community. By acknowledging these lessons openly and honestly, we're paving the way for a safer and more resilient future, not just for us, but for all of human spaceflight throughout the world. So I'll give you a few examples of my favorite points that I'd like to make about things. I'd like to highlight them for people who may or may not be aware. The Apollo Challenger Columbia Lessons Learned program is a testament to our commitment to sharing those lessons. So we have a newly developed website, which is a comprehensive repository offering insights from our most tragic mishaps. And by exploring common themes and incorporating those lessons into our training, into our work practices, and our policies, that's how we're closing the loop, to make sure that that knowledge gained is actually integrated in every facet of our organization. So I encourage you to look at that. Another one is organizational silence, and Bill had some great examples to talk about from his history, which tragically have been repeated through the history of NASA. It's very detrimental to our safety culture, so it's critical that we foster an environment where every member of our team feels empowered to voice their insights, even if they diverge from the consensus in the room. When we empower our employees to participate, we create a space where their diverse talents, skills, and perspectives converge. And that's what we need to have a robust foundation for success. So we have to actively seek and value those diverse perspectives, not necessarily just waiting for them to be voiced, but actively encourage them, because they're essential in creating that comprehensive understanding of the potential challenges as we do things no one has ever attempted before. And good leaders have to set the stage for that by establishing those expectations and reinforcing positive behavior that encourage individuals to express their thoughts and concerns. You have to go a step further. You can't just say it, you have to meet people where they are and acknowledge that in the room it can be hard to speak up. So the culture of mission success and organizational excellence thrives when we can do that and when we can proactively seek it out. To combat organizational silence, we've implemented many actionable tactics, including training initiatives such as the Organizational Silence class released by the NASA Safety Center, and I encourage you to take that if you have not. We had a series of workshops over the last year around like the Columbia Remembrance series, and they're a great platform for reinforcing the importance of safety. And as the agency turns over, people retire, new people come in, we can make sure that every member of the team understands the gravity of their personal role in maintaining a culture of safety. In the complex realm of space exploration, understanding and managing risks are paramount. So I'd like to talk about a tool developed by NASA to assess relative risk in vehicle development. And it's called Probabilistic Risk Assessment, or PRA, and it's famous around the world. Probabilistic risk assessments provide us with a very disciplined, systematic, and quantitative framework to evaluate potential hazards and their relative risk probabilities compared to each other. And so once we systematically address the basic questions which go into PRA, what could go wrong, what the likelihoods and uncertainties are, and the potential consequences. So that equips us with the knowledge that we need to navigate the complexities of the risks we face in space exploration. So we really all have to embrace this data-driven approach, which not only informs decision-making, but allows us to prioritize resources where they will be the most impactful on safety, which helps us ensure the highest levels of risk management across our missions. In closing, as we honor the Day of Remembrance this week, let me emphasize again that safety is a shared responsibility that extends to every single individual in this organization. Our commitment to transparency and open communication, to sharing lessons learned, to speaking what's in your heart will collectively propel us toward a future where our missions continue not just to be groundbreaking, but are also executed with the highest standards of care and safety. And together, that will enable us to push out to responsible exploration of the solar system, pushing the boundaries of human achievement while still ensuring the integrity and success of every NASA mission. So thank you for your dedication to the noble cause we share in our mission at NASA, and let us continue to learn and share our lessons. Let's adapt, let's innovate, and continue to strive for excellence in everything we do. So stay safe and stay focused and keep pushing the boundaries. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I hope you all can recognize the sincerity and emotion that goes with the words we heard from the administrator and deputy administrator. And thank you for joining today. I know we put a special effort on asking people to be part of this. And as you can see, this leadership team takes the subject of safety seriously, and we're reassured to see that you all are doing the same and recognizing the significance of the Day of Remembrance. We come together to honor and recognize the sacrifice of the lives of the Apollo 1, Challenger, and Columbia crews, and to use this time to renew our focus on safety. As you know, safety is a core value here at NASA, and it's critical to everything that we do. Our other core values of integrity, teamwork, excellence, and inclusion go hand in hand with safety, each buttressing the others. Last year was the 20th anniversary of our loss of Columbia, and our town hall was heavily focused on that loss and the stories of our leadership team that were so touched by that crew. The Columbia tragedy is still recent enough that many current employees were at the agency at that time, and we want to ensure those that live through it have those experiences and share those very personal lessons with those who have joined the agency since then. Last year at this observance, We had not yet announced our Artemis II crew of Reed Wiseman and Victor Glover, Christina Cook, and Jeremy Hansen. I hope in the last 8 months you've had the opportunity to learn about them and hear them talk. Please get to know them and keep them in mind as we're preparing to send those 4 people on a mission around the moon for the first time in more than 50 years. In fact, we take the safety of their mission so seriously that earlier this month we announced we're moving their flight to September of 2025 to allow more time to ensure we can fly the mission and return them safely to Earth. It's really an incredible time in space exploration, yet sending people to space is unarguably the most dangerous thing we do. We have 3 crew missions to the International Space Station coming up in the next 3 months. Crew 8 with NASA astronauts Matthew Dominic, Michael Barrett, and Jeanette Epps. A Soyuz launch with NASA astronaut Tracy Caldwell Dyson. And the Boeing crew flight test, a new vehicle with NASA astronauts Sonny Williams and Butch Wilmore. It's imperative for these 6 NASA astronauts and our international partner crew members that we remain focused and fly safely. In addition, we're working many groundbreaking missions with new systems and new technologies concurrently. Pam and I just had the privilege to be out in California to unveil the new X-59 supersonic experimental aircraft, and we're looking forward to those first flights in the coming months. We also have 3 important Earth science missions launching this year, as well as an interplanetary mission to Jupiter's moon Europa. With all of this and more on our plate, I exhort you to prioritize your role in your own safety and the safety of your coworkers and teammates. At NASA, we do hazardous things every single day, not just on launch days. Please take a moment and think about something that you do that may compromise your safety or mission safety on a normal day at work. Maybe you work with tools and machines that present an inherent safety risk. Maybe it's more mundane. Maybe it's your commute. Just take time to think about it. What you're doing on a daily basis to ensure not just your own safety, but the safety of those around you. I want us to be vigilant. Are there steps you can take to act in a more safety-conscious manner? Use your safety checklist, even if you know it by heart. For many of us, it's easier to focus on the big events, like flying people to the moon on Artemis II. I challenge you to really think smaller. Consider the little actions that could have big repercussions. If corrected in the near term, they will prevent more dire consequences down the line. And this applies to you, not just as a NASA employee, but you as a person, as a human being. What are you doing outside of work to ensure your own personal safety and well-being? We cannot say we care about your safety without saying we care about you as an individual, your well-being, your health, both physical and mental. Our personal well-being will impact our safety and the decisions we make every day. Just as we want to break any culture of silence around safety at NASA, and for our missions, I know a much harder culture of silence to break is about your own health. On an airline flight, you're instructed to put your own mask on before helping others. The same is true for your safety, for your health. Be your own advocate. We want you to speak up about safety in general and safety about yourself. We have resources available for employees facing a variety of challenges, including caregiving, stress, and major life adjustments. If you don't feel comfortable saying something to your supervisor or colleagues, please reach out to the Employee Assistance Program. Employee privacy is protected by strict confidentiality laws and by professional ethical standards. You truly matter. You're an important part of the NASA team. Take care of yourself and take care of one another. In doing both, we will continue to achieve great things for NASA, the nation, humanity, and for each other. Thank you.
Just want to thank our leadership for sharing those very important thoughts and stories with us. We will now move to the question and answer portion of today's town hall. For those of you that are in the room, please feel free to come to the mic on this side of the room to ask your questions focused on safety. We also have the most upvoted questions focused on safety that were submitted from the workforce prior to today's program. So I will get us started off, and I think the administrator touched on this a good bit in his remarks about retaliation, but I will ask, what can leadership do to facilitate reporting of safety issues? NASA's safety program isn't a good solution, and retaliation can sometimes happen. How do we fix this?
If you see something, say something, and most directly, go to your supervisor. If there's any threat to your security as a NASA employee by reporting something, you've got a way to get around it. You can go to a website for safety, sma.nasa.gov. You can report it there, and it will be anonymous. But my email is published. And by the way, my emails are not looked over by somebody else. They come directly to me. You've got that as a backup. And for any supervisor, I want them to understand that to encourage this culture of safety, you are to report that up. Now, I've had plenty of people that have contacted me, and I respond directly to them or get the person in the organization who can answer their question. Sometimes when I get a suggestion, a statement, a concern, the facts may not actually align with what that person is. And I expect in the reporting of that back to the employee that they point out why that's the case. Again, I will underscore what Jim said. There is no retaliatory atmosphere that will be tolerated in this organization. And there are plenty of ways to get around that if you, as an employee, feel like that your concern for safety is being stifled. We've said it. You can go to your center leadership, and if you're not getting the satisfaction that your concerns are being not heard, you can do it anonymously through sma.nasa.gov. And your ace in the hole is bill.nelson@nasa.gov. Thanks.
Thank you. We also had quite a few questions focused on COVID-19 and the safety of our workforce. So I will ask, is safety a priority for us? If safety is a priority for us, why do we have no efforts to prevent the spread of long COVID on site?
I can go ahead and take that. So I think you heard Pam use the phrase data-driven when she gave her remarks. From a data-driven perspective, that's what we do as an agency, and that's the approach we're taking with COVID and frankly, the flu now as well, to get that data from the CDC. Those are the guidelines that we're following to be consistent. And what I'd say is, first of all, I mentioned taking care of yourself. If you feel you have those symptoms, if you feel you're not feeling well, please go see your physician. Please go see your physician. It's important that we take that data-driven approach so that we're not doing things that don't align with one of our core values of integrity and using that data to drive our decisions. So I encourage you to keep looking at the guidelines from the CDC. That's what we use, and take care of yourself by seeing your physician.
Another question submitted online. How do we prevent organizational silence from blinding ourselves to safety issues, especially recurring issues and trends?
Could you repeat the question, Faith?
Of course. How do we prevent organizational silence from blinding ourselves to safety issues, especially recurring issues and trends?
Yes, thank you. Wow, there is a history of this. I think Bill gave the Challenger example, and the Columbia example, of course, is on my flight, 2 flights before Columbia, a piece of foam hit the aluminum skirt of the solid rocket booster. How much more evidence you need that foam can actually hurt something? Right there that it was, but it got pushed down and not made something that was required to be resolved before flight. So I think I'm going to answer the concern that I actually have is some of the pride that we have in the things that we do leads to a sense of complacency. And the more we do it, the more complacent you get. As a young pilot, I was taught that somewhere between 500 and 1,000 hours was the most dangerous time for a pilot. You knew just enough to think you were pretty good at what you were doing, but not enough to have the pants scared off you enough to know that you really weren't, completely able to know every factor around you as a pilot. So I think the silence is very, this is exactly what we're trying to get at with organizational silence, is the ability to see beyond what the consensus around the table is and say, hey, we got some data here. We really need to be looking at it. That's actually the key piece of data. But in some ways, it's hard to get around our own pride and success. And to me, that's the thing that worries me the most, is that we get very comfortable and complacent that we've done it successfully enough times. That's a very dangerous place to be. Fortunately, in a lot of the things that we're doing today, we are doing some new things, which I think keeps us all on our toes. But let's all pause and reflect about the things we've been doing successfully for a long time. And I think that's where we also need to focus our attention and make sure that we're looking for patterns and trends and data that contradict what could look like years of safe behaviors and safe outcomes.
Thank you. Another question we have from online: when will offices that contain asbestos be replaced with ones without any to improve employee safety? Can we move or telework?
Sure, I'll go ahead and take that. So I think a couple things to be reassured of. Number one, we have monitoring in the buildings where that could be a danger, so we're always looking for anything that gets disturbed that might affect the employee's health. When it is in walls or ceilings and not disturbed, it is contained. And when we do find it, we have a process across the agency that we use to remediate that, and during that process, keep the employees isolated from it.
And by the way, I want to add just something that we wouldn't normally discuss here. We live in a society today that there are a lot of crazy things going on. And there are people who take it upon themselves to go and harm other people. That's why we have a security force here. And they are trained to help protect us. Give them a little encouraging word when you go in and out of the gate. That's important. When you drive in and out of the parking garage, a little encouraging word. And, of course, in an emergency, listen to the instructions, whatever that emergency is.
Thank you. I think we'll ask one or two more questions. The managers around me casually overrule non-critical technical comments for me as an engineer. What do you do to prevent this management domination culture from overruling critical technical decisions as this culture grows?
Yeah, I almost feel like I don't want to answer the person who asked it, but I would like to talk to all the supervisors in the agency And I'm going to start by modeling a behavior that I think is very important. We've been talking a lot as a senior leadership team about positive team building behaviors, and one of them is assuming good intent. So I am going to assume that the managers involved perhaps have some personal experience and more years of it. And so for them, perhaps they have data that is sitting in their head somewhere and experiences that cause them to say, thanks, but we're not going to do that. I can tell you that one of the things that's important to me, I don't always do it, but I try, is I take the time to explain my decisions to the people that I'm working with so that they can have the benefit of my mistakes and experience in the past that's guiding me towards this decision about, yes, we're going to do it, no, we're not, or we're going to do it this way. So I'm going to assume positive intent that these managers have some real data in their heads that they're thinking about when it appears they are blowing someone off. So I'm going to remind you that it looks like you're blowing someone off, and don't do it. Explain. Now I will address the person who answered the question or asked the question, which is, if you have the opportunity to follow up with your supervisor in private and say, hey, you really, you clearly had some reasons why you dismissed the comment based on your experience. Can you teach me? What can you tell me about why? What's in your history? Can you make me a better employee by getting the benefit of your experience so that I can really understand the thinking behind it? And that is my advice to both parties involved.
I want to thank everyone so much for asking your questions today. I'd like to hand it back over to Administrator Nelson for some closing thoughts.
Well, thank all of you for attending today, and those of you online that are attending. We encourage you to share what you may have learned here with your fellow employees. At NASA, we have an incredible responsibility, and I hope you take the rest of this day of remembrance, and there will be events throughout the week. Pam and I are going out to Arlington to the grave sites later this week. Every day at NASA, we carry forward the spirit and legacy of our fallen heroes. And so I'd like for everybody to let's join together in a moment of silence. Thanks, everybody.
I want to thank you all for joining today's town hall and helping NASA honor the legacy of some of our bravest heroes while we recommit to safety across the agency. Thank you so much and have a great day.